What happens when Hollywood royalty walks onto one of television's most beloved chat shows and turns a friendly interview into an absolute disaster? It only took 37 seconds after one specific comment for everything to completely fall apart. Graham Norton has hosted thousands of guests over the years. He's known for his warmth, his humor, his ability to make even the most nervous celebrities feel at home on his famous red couch. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold on this particular evening. The show started like any other. The audience was buzzing with excitement. The lights were bright, and Graham walked out with his signature smile and that playful energy everyone loves. He introduced his guest for the evening, and Meghan Markle walked onto the stage in a stunning designer gown, waving to the crowd as they applauded. She settled into the couch, and Graham, ever the professional, started with some light conversation. "Welcome, welcome. So lovely to have you here," he said, his Irish accent warm and inviting. "How are you finding London these days?" Meghan smiled, but there was something tight about it. "Well, Graham, I think the better question is, how is London finding me?" The audience laughed, thinking it was a joke. Graham chuckled too. "Oh, I'm sure London is thrilled to have you. Now, we've got some fun things to talk about tonight." But before he could continue, Meghan interrupted. "Actually, Graham, I'd like to address something first, if you don't mind." Graham, always gracious, nodded. "Of course. Go right ahead. I've noticed that your show has had quite a few royal family members on over the years," she began, "and I'm curious why the questions you ask them are so different from the ones you ask me." The audience went quiet. Graham's smile didn't fade, but you could see the confusion in his eyes. "I'm not sure I follow. I try to tailor my questions to each guest, what they're comfortable with, what they're promoting." "Comfortable with," Meghan repeated, her voice taking on an edge. "So, you think I'm not comfortable with real questions? Challenging questions?" Graham shifted slightly. No, that's not what I meant at all. I just meant that I like to make sure everyone has a good time here. This is meant to be fun." "Fun," Meghan said, and there was something cold in the way she said it. "Right. Fun for who exactly? Fun for your audience who wants to see me perform like some kind of trained SEAL?" The atmosphere in the studio changed completely. The audience members looked at each other, unsure if this was part of some bit they didn't understand. You could feel the energy shift from excitement to confusion to something approaching dread. People stopped smiling. They sat up straighter in their seats. Some exchanged worried glances with the people next to them. Graham maintained his composure, his years of experience kicking in. He had been in awkward situations before. He had dealt with drunk guests, angry guests, guests who froze up on camera. But this was different. This felt personal in a way he couldn't quite understand. "I can assure you, nobody here thinks of you that way," he said gently. "We're all just happy you're here. Why don't we talk about your upcoming projects? I hear you've been working on something exciting." But Meghan wasn't having it. She crossed her arms and leaned back into the couch, her expression hardening. "There you go again, trying to control the narrative, trying to steer me toward your safe little questions. Do you do this with everyone, or just with me?" The audience was visibly uncomfortable now. A few people coughed. Someone's phone buzzed, and they quickly silenced it. The usual warmth and energy of the studio had been replaced by a thick, oppressive tension that seemed to press down on everyone present. Graham took a breath. You could see him trying to figure out how to salvage this. His mind was probably racing through options, strategies, ways to bring this back to a place of civility. "I do this with everyone because this is a talk show. We have segments planned, topics prepared. It's how these things work. It's how we make sure everyone has a good time and the show flows smoothly." "How things work," Meghan said, shaking her head slowly, deliberately. "You know what I think? I think you're afraid of me. Afraid of what I might say if you actually let me speak freely." "You are speaking freely," Graham pointed out, still keeping his tone light. though you could hear the strain underneath. Right now, you're saying exactly what you want to say. Nobody is stopping you. Nobody is cutting you off. You have the floor. Do I? Meghan challenged. Because it feels like every time I start to say something real, something true, you jump in with another one of your pre-written questions designed to keep everything surface level and palatable. Graham set his cards down on the small table next to his chair. He looked directly at her, his expression still kind, but growing more serious. I haven't jumped in once. Not once. You've been speaking continuously for the past few minutes, and I've been listening. That's what a good host does. They listen. Am I? Meghan leaned forward, her voice rising slightly. Because it feels like you're just waiting for me to stop so you can move on to your next scripted question. Like nothing I say actually matters to you. Graham paused before responding, clearly trying to choose his words with care. Everything you say matters, but I have to be honest with you. I'm struggling to understand what's happening here. Did something happen before you came on stage? Did someone say something to upset you? Because you seem to have come out here already angry, already defensive, and I genuinely don't know why. Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was a sharp, bitter sound that made several audience members flinch. There it is. Classic deflection. Make it about me being emotional, me being upset, me being the problem. Never about your behavior, your questions, your assumptions. The audience was completely silent now. This wasn't funny anymore. This wasn't entertainment. This was uncomfortable in a way that made people want to look away, but feel unable to. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Graham set down his cards completely now, giving her his full attention. Look, I'm not sure what's happening here, but I promise you, there's no agenda. There's no trap. There's no conspiracy. I ask questions. You answer them. We have a laugh, and everyone goes home happy. That's literally all this is. That's all it's ever been. Everyone goes home happy, Meghan repeated mockingly, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Everyone except the person sitting on this couch being treated like they don't matter. Like their thoughts and feelings are just obstacles to get through before the commercial break. I have never, not once, treated you like you don't matter, Graham said, and for the first time, there was a real firmness in his voice. Not anger, but a kind of steady resolve. I treat all my guests with respect. Every single one. That's not just what I do. That's who I am. Oh, please, Meghan scoffed. Spare me the self-righteous speech, Graham. We both know how this works. You pretend to be nice. You pretend to care. But at the end of the day, we're all just content for you. Just stories to fill your airtime. Respect, Meghan laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. It echoed through the studio in an unsettling way. You want to talk about respect? Let's talk about how you introduced me tonight. Did you notice how you downplayed my achievements? How you made it all about my personal life instead of my work? How you reduced everything I've done to a footnote? Graham looked genuinely confused now, his brow furrowing. I introduced you the way your team asked me to introduce you. We got the notes from your publicist just this morning. Word for word, I read what they sent over. If you have an issue with the introduction, you need to take that up with your own people. Don't, Meghan said sharply, pointing a finger at him. Don't you dare blame my team for your choices, Graham. You're the host. You have the power here. You have the final say. You could have chosen to do better. You could have chosen to highlight my accomplishments instead of my relationships, but you didn't. I'm trying to do better right now by having this conversation with you, Graham said, his patience clearly being tested, but still holding on. But you're not giving me much to work with. You're attacking me for things I haven't done, blaming me for decisions your own team made, and turning what should be a pleasant interview into something I don't even recognize. Meghan stood up suddenly, so abruptly that her purse fell from her lap onto the couch. The audience gasped collectively, a sharp intake of breath that filled the studio. Several people in the front row, actually leaned back in their seats, as if the confrontation might somehow spill over into the crowd. "There it is," Meghan said, her voice shaking with what sounded like rage. "The truth finally comes out. I'm difficult. I'm not giving you enough. I'm the problem. It's always the woman's fault, isn't it? Always the woman who gets blamed when things go wrong." Graham remained seated, looking up at her with an expression that mixed concern with growing frustration. "That's not what I said. Please sit down. Let's take a breath and talk about this like adults. Let's figure out what's really going on here." "Talk about what, Graham?" Meghan's voice was getting louder now, more shrill. "How you've already decided what kind of guest I'm going to be. How you've already written me off as some kind of problem. How you've already planned your little anecdotes about the difficult celebrity you had to deal with." "I haven't written you off as anything," Graham said, standing up now too. His voice was still calm, still measured, but you could hear the frustration creeping in like water seeping through cracks. "But I have to tell you, I've been doing this for a very long time. I've hosted hundreds, maybe thousands of guests, and I've never, not once, had a guest turn on me like this for absolutely no reason." "No reason?" Meghan's voice got even louder, loud enough that the sound engineers probably had to adjust their levels. "You think I have no reason? Do you have any idea what it's like to sit on this couch and feel like you're being judged for every single word that comes out of your mouth? Do you know what it's like to be scrutinized and criticized and picked apart no matter what you do or say?" "Actually, yes," Graham said. "I sit in that chair every single night, and I'm judged by millions of people. But I don't take it out on my guests." The audience murmured their agreement. A few people even started clapping, but they stopped quickly, unsure if they should. Meghan looked out at the audience, then back at Graham. "Oh, so now you're turning them against me too?" "I'm not turning anyone against anyone," Graham said, exhausted now. "You're doing this to yourself." "Typical," Meghan said. "Absolutely typical. You can't handle a woman who stands up for herself, so you make her the villain. Standing up for yourself and attacking someone who's done nothing wrong are two very different things," Graham replied. "And right now, you're doing the latter." Meghan grabbed her purse from beside the couch. "You know what, Graham? I don't need this. I don't need to sit here and be disrespected on national television." "Nobody has disrespected you," Graham said, his voice rising slightly for the first time. "The only person who's been disrespectful tonight is you." The audience gasped again. Graham Norton, the man who never loses his cool, who always keeps things light and fun, had just called out his guest directly. Meghan's face went red. "How dare you? How dare you speak to me that way?" "How dare I?" Graham looked incredulous. "You've spent the last 10 minutes accusing me of things I haven't done, insulting me, insulting my show, and making my audience uncomfortable. What exactly did you expect me to say?" "I expected you to be professional," Meghan snapped. "I have been nothing but professional," Graham shot back. "I welcomed you onto my show. I prepared questions that your team approved. I tried to make you comfortable, and you've thrown it all back in my face." Meghan turned to the audience. "Are you all just going to sit there and let him talk to me like this?" The audience didn't respond. They sat in stunned silence, not knowing what to do. She turned back to Graham. "This is unbelievable. You're all unbelievable. If you're this unhappy being here, you're welcome to leave," Graham said quietly. "I won't stop you." "Oh, so now you're kicking me off your show?" Meghan's voice was shrill now. "I'm not kicking you off," Graham clarified. "I'm saying if you want to leave, you can leave. But if you want to stay, then we need to actually have a conversation instead of whatever this is." Meghan stood there for a moment, clutching her purse, looking between Graham and the audience. "You know what? Fine. I will leave. I don't need this show. I don't need any of this." She started walking toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly on the floor. Graham watched her go, shaking his head slightly. Just before she reached the curtain, she turned back. "You're going to regret this, Graham. Mark my words." Graham, who had been so patient, so kind, so understanding throughout the entire ordeal, simply said, "The only thing I regret is that we couldn't have the conversation I was hoping to have. I wish you all the best." Meghan stared at him for another moment, then turned and walked through the curtain. The door slammed behind her, and the sound echoed through the silent studio. Graham stood there alone on the stage, in front of his red couch, in front of his stunned audience. He ran a hand through his hair and let out a long breath. "Well," he said finally, and a few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. That was unexpected. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or stay quiet. Graham walked over to his chair and sat down, looking genuinely shaken. "I have to apologize to all of you," he said, looking directly at the camera. "That was not how I wanted tonight to go. That was not how any of this was supposed to happen." Someone in the audience shouted, "It wasn't your fault, Graham," and others joined in with applause and cheers of support. Graham smiled weakly. "You're very kind. Very, very kind. But still, you came here for a fun show, and instead you got, well, whatever that was. In all my years of doing this," he continued, "I have never had anything like that happen. I've had guests who were nervous, guests who were shy, guests who were a bit tipsy, but I've never had someone come on and just decide that I was the enemy before we even really started talking." The audience was listening intently now, hanging on every word. "I want you all to know," Graham said, his voice sincere, "that I meant what I said. I do try to treat every guest with respect. I do try to make everyone feel welcome. And if I failed to do that tonight, if I said something or did something that caused that reaction, then I genuinely apologize." More applause from the audience, louder this time. "But," he added, holding up a finger, "I also stand by what I said in that I don't think I did anything wrong. I asked standard questions. I tried to keep things light. I tried to redirect when things got tense. And sometimes, despite your best efforts, things just go sideways." He looked down at his notes, at the prepared questions he never got to ask, at the fun stories he never got to hear. "We had such a good show planned," he said softly. "We were going to talk about so many interesting things. We were going to laugh. We were going to have fun. And instead, it turned into that." The studio was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was the quiet of people who felt bad for Graham, who wanted to support him, who understood that sometimes you can do everything right, and things still go wrong. Graham looked up at the audience and smiled, a real smile this time. "You know what? We still have a show to do. We still have time left, and I'll be damned if I let this ruin everyone's night." The audience erupted in cheers and applause. Graham stood up, energized by their support. "So, here's what we're going to do," he said, clapping his hands together. "We're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have some fun. Real fun. The kind of fun we should have been having all along. Sound good?" The audience cheered louder. Graham waved to them and walked off stage as the lights dimmed. Backstage, producers were scrambling. Nobody knew quite what to do. The guest was gone. The interview had imploded. The show had to go on. But how? Graham stood in the wings, taking deep breaths, trying to process what had just happened. His producer came up to him, looking worried. "Are you okay?" she asked. Graham nodded. "I'm fine. I'm just, I don't know. Confused, mostly." "Did I do something wrong?" "No," she said firmly. "You did everything right. She came in with an agenda. There was nothing you could have done." "But why?" Graham asked. "Why come on a show just to do that?" The producer shrugged. "Some people just want to create drama. Some people thrive on conflict. You can't control that." Graham sighed. "I suppose not. But still, it's my show. I should have been able to handle it better." "You handled it perfectly," the producer insisted. You were calm. You were respectful. You gave her every opportunity to turn it around. And when she wouldn't, you stood your ground. The audience loves you for it. Graham looked out at the audience through the curtain. They were chatting amongst themselves, looking concerned, but also supportive. They're good people, he said. They are, the producer agreed. And they came here to see you. So go back out there and give them the show they deserve. Graham straightened his jacket and nodded. You're right. Let's do this. The lights came back up, and Graham walked back onto the stage to thunderous applause. He bowed slightly, genuinely touched by their support. Thank you, he said. Truly, thank you. You know, in all the chaos, I forgot to mention that we actually have another guest joining us shortly. So, we're not done yet. Not by a long shot. The audience cheered again, relieved that the show would continue. But before we bring them out, Graham said, sitting back down in his chair, I just want to say one more thing about what happened earlier. The audience quieted down, listening. I've been very lucky in my career, Graham began. I've met incredible people. I've heard amazing stories. I've laughed until I cried, and I've been moved until I cried. And yes, sometimes things don't go as planned. Sometimes conversations get awkward or uncomfortable. But that's okay. That's part of life. Part of real human interaction. He paused, choosing his words carefully. What happened tonight was not that, he continued. What happened tonight was someone who came onto this show with the intention of creating conflict. And you know what? That's their choice. That's their prerogative. But it's also my choice, and your choice, not to let that energy poison what we have here. The audience applauded in agreement. Because what we have here, Graham said, gesturing around the studio, is special. This is a place where people come to be themselves, to share their stories, to connect with each other, and with all of you watching at home. And I'll be damned if I let one bad experience change that. Standing ovation. The entire audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Graham stood too, waving his hands to get them to sit back down, but they wouldn't. They kept clapping, kept showing their support, kept letting him know that they were on his side. When they finally settled down, Graham wiped at his eyes. You're going to make me cry, he said with a laugh. And I've got another guest coming out soon. I can't be crying. The audience laughed with him, the tension finally broken, the warmth returning to the studio. All right, Graham said, picking up his cards again. Let's actually do what we came here to do. Let's have some fun. And for the rest of the show, that's exactly what they did. The next guest came out. The conversation flowed naturally. The laughs came easily. And by the end of the night, that disastrous interview with Meghan Markle felt like a distant memory. But for those who were there, who witnessed it firsthand, who saw Graham Norton face down an unreasonable guest with grace and dignity, it was a moment they would never forget. It was a reminder that kindness doesn't mean being a doormat, that patience doesn't mean accepting abuse, that being a good host means standing up for yourself and your audience when someone tries to turn your show into their personal battleground. Graham Norton proved that night what everyone already knew, but was reminded of in the most dramatic way possible. He is a professional, through and through. He is kind until kindness is taken advantage of. He is patient until patience becomes enabling. And he is, without question, one of the best hosts in television history. The show ended with Graham waving goodbye to his audience, thanking them for sticking with him through such a bizarre night, and promising them that next week would be back to normal. As the cameras stopped rolling and the audience filed out, many of them stopped to shake Graham's hand, to tell him he did the right thing, to assure him that they didn't blame him for what happened. Graham thanked each of them, genuinely grateful for their support, and as he finally left the studio that night, he felt a strange mix of emotions. Disappointment that the interview had gone so wrong, confusion about why it had happened, but also surprisingly a sense of pride because he had handled it. He had stood his ground. He had protected his show and his audience from someone who wanted to use his platform for negativity. And he had done it all while maintaining his dignity and his values. That's what makes a great host. Not someone who never faces challenges, but someone who faces them with grace.